Program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh, and very pleased to be joined this evening by someone from Consumer Protection. In the past, Bob Zaspel has usually been our guest, and but he's gotten a promotion and is no longer going to be doing the media type stuff. And so we're very pleased to be joined by Ed Walker. Your official title is Consumer Protection Investigator, State of Wisconsin, Bureau of Consumer Protection.
Yes, it is quite a big title there. It's a mouthful.
That is, but somehow you're able to get it on a business card, I guess. But Edward is your official name, but you said should just call you Ed.
Ed is
so
fine.
That's
Ed
what
is
we're
fine,
going to
sure.
do. So anyway, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate your coming down from Green Bay to chat with us about various consumer issues and scams, and we're going to cover the gamut tonight. We're going to talk about identity theft, scams, work at home scams, landlord-tenant issues, phishing scams.
That's good because there's so many new things going on,
Yeah.
Cheryl, right now that people really do need to be informed about, the landscape out there of what people are trying to get away with.
Yeah. Well, and as the economy worsens, it probably just continues to get to be a busier, more interesting time for you because you see more and more creativity in some of the scams that are being perpetuated, huh?
Absolutely. When the economy turns bad, like we've seen recently, we see consumers that are looking for a leg up. They're looking for an opportunity to recover back to a state of normalcy. Well, the scammers and the people that want to violate the law, they see that as a hungry fish. And a hungry fish is a little more likely to bite if it's hasn't eaten in quite a while.
Yeah.
So.
And if something looks even remotely appealing.
Even if the red
Yeah.
flags are up,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So anyway, we're gonna cover a gamut of stuff tonight, and throughout the course of the show, we'll be putting up the website address for Consumer Protection. There's also a toll-free number, and I will be saying that throughout the show. It's 1-800-422-7128. So, I guess, the first thing we should probably talk about, because it's the lesser of some of these scams. It's not even a scam, really, but it's do not call. People were told a few years back that we could get on this do not call list, but yet, the complaint I hear all the time is, but these places are still calling me, and I guess, some of them truly are coming from telemarketers who shouldn't be calling. But the other thing is, I think people misunderstand who is not allowed to call under the do not call list. There are some people who can still call, and so I'm sure that you'll tell us about that. But and there's two registries also. There's one national do not call registry, and there's one specifically for the state of Wisconsin.
That's correct. The National Federal Do Not Call list is administered by the Federal Trade Commission. And there's some differences between that and the state. For example, if with the federal do not call list, when you're on there, I believe it's several years, about 5 years your number stays on there, whereas in the state of Wisconsin, for our list, it's a 2-year window that you need to keep renewing your number. And the Federal Trade Commission, they have a huge database of numbers. Many people think if you sign up for federal, you'll be included in Wisconsin's and vice versa. However, that's not true. You do need to sign up for both.
Okay. All right. So the do not call for Wisconsin alone is nocall.wisconsin.gov, and that toll-free number is 1-866-9 no call, and I'll give that a little bit later on as well. But so that's the state one. Do you know what the federal one is offhand?
I don't know what the federal do not call list is offhand, but if you have a computer, just go to the Federal Trade Commission, and they do have the link to the Federal Trade Commission's website right there. And I do believe we may have one on our Department of Ag Trade and Consumer Protection website as well.
Sure. You could probably just Google do not call National Registry also, and I'm sure that would...
It'll be number one or number two, Cheryl.
Probably. So who is allowed to call even if you're registered on a do not call list somewhere?
Well, when we talk about Wisconsin do not call, the way it's set up primarily is consumers put their numbers on the database, no names or anything. Telemarketers are required to purchase that list and scrub their own telemarketing list against it. Now, when we talk about exemptions, there are a few very notables. First of all, we do get complaints from businesses that complain that telemarketers are calling them. Unfortunately, the do not call registry only applies to residential phone numbers.
Okay.
And very recently we've added cell phone numbers or mobile phones due to portability. If a company is trying to sell a product for profit or sell a product where proceeds will go to charity, those are the telemarketers that the list is designed to keep from calling you. However, politicians, charitable contributions, charitable organizations, and people that are taking surveys or company taking surveys, market research, those folks are exempt from the no-call list. So you may still get calls from those organizations.
And also organizations that you give to or do business with. Like if you make a charitable donation to some kind of nonprofit, they're allowed to call you. And companies that you do business with, you may be on their mailing list, maybe you have a credit card with them or whatever, they are also allowed to call you.
That's correct. There's a honeymoon period after you've ended a relationship with a business, a company, that they're still allowed to call you back and win you back. Past that, many consumers report, well, I haven't done business with this company in X amount of months, X amount of years. In that case, that would be considered a no-call violation. When we see complaints, do honest mistakes happen? Absolutely. People are human beings.
Sure.
However, we look for patterns and companies, organizations, numbers that are repeatedly calling in defiance of that list.
So you do see this, probably not frequently, but you see it on a regular enough basis where people are just in absolute direct violation of the do not call rules.
Yes, we do. We pare those down to two separate groups. So there's the businesses in the state or nationwide that are legitimate businesses. They're selling a product and they either don't understand that they need to be registered, perhaps they don't care, or they just have people that perhaps violate the list without their knowledge. Those are the companies we can get a hold of. We can warn them, we can issue cease and desist orders, and in some cases we prosecute civilly for some stiff forfeitures. The other end of the spectrum are the unknowns, the folks that are trying to phish, the folks that are trying to get your personal information.
Right.
Now, they're scammers, they're criminals, and if the law against theft and ID theft is not going to stop them, the do not call list may not stop them. So we try to look at the intent of the caller. And based on complaints, we usually can determine what the intent of a call is.
Sure. Okay. Well, again, the do not call website for the state of Wisconsin is nocall.wisconsin.gov, and the number is 1-866-9-NO-CALL. So, and if you're looking for the federal number or the federal website, just Google a National Do Not Call Registry, and it certainly will come up. I think for one of the things you had mentioned, Ed, was that it's every 2 years that they have to renew, and for some people, they don't remember that, and I'm one of those people. So what I do, and maybe it works for me. Maybe it would work for other people. I just go in like once a year, and I put right on my calendar, right at the beginning of the year, you can do it, or the middle of the year, do not call. And even though it's every year, there's no harm in that. There's no penalty in doing that. And that way you're always keeping your phone number current and on the list.
Well, exactly. One time set every year is good advice. For example, just like change your smoke detector batteries. You want to do that once a year at a minimum. Sign up for the no-call list. It takes, I think the quickest I've seen it done is maybe 10 or 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And you can also do it online. You can do it via phone. You call our General 800 number, and they can point you in the right direction. But do it once a year, and you'll never forget. And make sure you get your cell phones on there and every residential phone.
Yep. All right, very good. Motor vehicle repair shops. You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, Ed, was that there's a new court decision that has to do with, you know, mechanical vehicle repair shops and so forth. What's the new law?
Well, it's not really a new law. Rather, the Supreme Court, State of Wisconsin Appeals Court, going ahead and reaffirming a previous decision.
Okay.
Now, part of the Motor Vehicle Code states that a client or a consumer is not to be paying for repairs that they did not authorize. Okay? The situation that surrounds this is, for example, I take my vehicle in and I ask for a certain repair. Well, the shop goes ahead and does a repair above and beyond what I authorized. Okay? So I wouldn't have to pay for that. The problem with that is I got something for my value. Even though I was charged more, I received a product in the form of parts or service for what I paid. So sometimes the courts didn't consider that consumer damage, and it would be more of a civil issue to be argued in civil court. And apparently this case went further along, and apparently the decision is that no matter if you received benefit from the unauthorized repair, you still, as a consumer, don't have to pay for it. So that's real important, because sometimes you see situations where a shop will do an unauthorized repair, and it may cost you a considerable amount of money, and you're going to say, well, I didn't authorize that, I don't want that done. And their contention is, you know what, the parts are in there, we did the service, it needed it, you did get something for your money even though you didn't authorize it. In previous times, there was no one to say, or there was no decision that backed up the contention that, you know, the consumer should get that repair for free because the shop violated the law and did an unauthorized repair. That's been reaffirmed. Now, that's not saying that you know, people should be going out and looking for unauthorized repairs. What that is saying is it's more of a warning to shops. Make sure that you're completing your paperwork properly, disclosing what you need to for the consumer, and making sure you stick to that repair order or that estimate until you speak with that customer or get something in writing. So
Now, this is Wisconsin only.
That's correct. This
Okay.
applies to the state of Wisconsin, businesses and transactions happening in the state.
Okay. So, you know, I would like to think that in our viewing area anyway, we've got, you know, shops that are on the up and up. And I've not really heard, you know, I hear people who are disgruntled with a certain place, but that may be for a variety of reasons. I've not really heard of anyone who, you know, says this place is just unscrupulous as the day is long and they're crooked. Yeah, I've not heard that. But let's just say someone has a situation like you just described, where they take their car in for, you know, maybe a brake job or whatever, and the next thing you know, they're doing something else and haven't told them. They go to pick up the car, they're hit with this big bill, even if it's only $50 more than what they were anticipating spending. You know, what do you recommend they do? Because none of us is walking around with that case law decision in our back pocket or our wallet, and you know, meanwhile they've got our car, and they've got the keys to the car, and would, I suspect, very likely threaten the mechanic's lien. So, and that can be very intimidating for a lot of people.
Yes, it can.
So what do you recommend folks do?
Well, let's move back one step and talk about prevention, just to make sure that you understand what's going on and the mechanic or the shop knows. Don't go to a shop, don't patronize a shop that doesn't put everything in writing. By law, they're required to give you the paperwork in writing, give you a written estimate, and ask for your initials or your signature if you want to authorize them to do more. Otherwise, they can't do any more. Make sure you check out your shop. You can call our agency, you can call the Better Business Bureau, check online, see if there's complaints. Word of mouth is powerful. But once they have your car, and perhaps they've done an unauthorized repair, and they may be holding it for ransom, for lack of a better term, it's a tough situation, because at that point, the facts of the matter, did this person authorize this repair? Is this a proper repair that they didn't authorize, that they can't pay for? A regular patrol officer, if you call the police, is not going to perhaps have the expertise and simply may call it a civil matter. However, the first thing you need to do in that situation is don't try to steal your car. That could just lead to nothing but trouble. You may have to get a ride home and you may have to get the paperwork for it. If you have the money, you may be forced to pay for it. Keep all your paperwork, keep all your receipts. But certainly give us a call at Consumer Protection, file a complaint online. Get to us as soon as you can. There are certain mechanisms in place where we may be able to help in an expeditious fashion. And sometimes it takes us getting involved in interviewing shops to find out and understand what the situation is and maybe show them the error of their ways.
You know, I can see where a lot of problems come in with shops, because typically, and I'm not saying that they're doing something wrong, even though they probably are, because they're not giving you a copy of this, you know, and they're not telling you how much it's going to cost. Say you've got a knock in your car. You don't know what's causing that knock. You take it in, you say, my car is knocking. It's making a knocking noise. Mm-hmm. Well, they've got to diagnose the problem. Correct. And I don't think I've ever had a shop call me and say, okay, we've diagnosed the problem, here's what it is, I need you to come back down and sign an estimate, a written estimate. That just doesn't happen. They tell you what it is on the phone, they get your permission, and you say either yay or nay, and then everybody proceeds accordingly. Do you think that this is where a lot of the problems are coming in, where people are, you know, it's a he said, she said kind of thing?
Many times that is true. Keep in mind, when we go to a shop for auto service, we're going there because we don't know how to fix it ourselves. Otherwise, we would be fixing ourselves. Sure. Have the resources. So we put a lot of trust in people that are supposed to be experts. So when they give us an opinion, A, B, or C needs to be fixed, we're going to trust that, because otherwise we wouldn't be there. Right. When you fill out your paperwork, you have a written estimate. Always ask for one. Should be spots on the form that's recommended by state law and actually mandated, where you have to give them the okay to go ahead with the repair no matter what it costs, that they need to contact you and get your permission, written or verbal, before repairs go above X amount of dollars, and you can specify that. Mm-hmm. Or you can tell them to stop if any work's going to exceed a certain amount of money. So you have your three options there as to what you want the shop to do. Now, it depends on how the shop wants to handle it. I know I've gone to have work done and they've called me and said, Ed, it's this, it's going to cost about this, what do you want me to do? And the consumer's got to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Many times the complaints we have is, it's not so much the paperwork, it's, you know what, you said you fixed it and it's doing the same thing, it's still knocking. Yeah. Part of that problem is, in the state of Wisconsin, there's no real certification to be an auto mechanic. There's no minimum qualifications. There's a qualification to be an ASC certified mechanic. However, there's no minimum education or level of expertise unless you're with perhaps a larger dealership, you know, a major manufacturer dealership. So you need to really scrutinize the education, the qualifications of the shop and maybe the people working at it. No one wants to do that, though. No. It's tough, especially when it's 3 p.m. on a Friday and you need to go up north with your car and you need something looked at. Right. It's a tough situation because sometimes they have all the power. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot less problems with the smaller shops, Cheryl, because there's less of them. There's less of them. Most auto repair shops are more going towards the dealers and the medium-sized shops. The mom and pop shop on the corner that does things by a handshake and no problem, pay me later, those are few and far between these days. Sure. And mostly those folks maybe didn't know the law as well as they should have, whereas the corporate folks, there's a big incentive to follow the law. Okay, all right. Anything else on motor vehicle shops that you think viewers should be aware of? What I can say is keep in mind that word of mouth is a positive thing. You know, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. Well, it can be. It can be a negative thing, too. It certainly can. What I always recommend is, instead of waiting until a repair needs to occur, before that happens, visit some shops in your local neighborhood, visit some shops in town, talk to the mechanics, talk to the manager. Get a feel as to who you trust, what their qualifications are, and be prepared in case something happens, you know who you trust before you are in a tight spot. Okay, all right. Landlord-tenant problems and complaints, you know. Boy, this is one that is always up on your list, and I mean, it's
On your top 10 consumer complaints, landlord-tenant issues are number 2. You know, telemarketing, just for the viewer's edification, is number 1. But, you know, number 2 is landlord-tenants. What are the main things that you see? I'm sure it can run the gamut, but there's probably a kind of a common thread, I would think.
There's a few major problems that we see in typical landlord-tenant disputes. One of those is the fact that some landlords try to remove property or remove tenants from a rental property because they haven't paid rent or they've breached a lease without going to court and having a judge sign an eviction. Now, a self-help eviction is what we call it in the law, is prohibited in the state. For example, if you're a landlord and you, even if you have a breach of lease, the tenant's not removing from the property, if you enter that property and remove the person or their belongings, you're creating quite a problem for yourself and a pretty serious violation. It doesn't happen as much anymore, Cheryl, because I think more landlords are understanding what the law says. That's probably the worst case scenario for a renter if they can't pay their rent to actually be thrown out in the winter. And that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Some of the other major issues we have are repairs. That's probably our biggest complaint. The landlord's not fixing this. This window's been broken. There's mold in my apartment. It's a common one. Our state law that we enforce, Cheryl, does not mandate or command a landlord to make repairs. It states that a landlord can't rent an uninhabitable dwelling unit. Now, who judges that? Probably the local building inspector judges that.
Sure.
There have been instances where landlords perhaps have rented out a place that had orders on it. Repair orders or perhaps condemnation orders. We've run into that. Rarely, thank God. Rarely, thank God. And we have to tell the consumers that the first place you need to go is the city building inspector. They have the authority to inspect a premises and perhaps order repairs that a landlord has got to abide with and has got to repair. Unfortunately, our agency has no authority to do that. So that's quite high up on the list. As far as other problems, we're looking at things like damages. A landlord and tenant, they part ways, however way, whether it's by eviction or they leave, and the landlord has a security deposit usually that they're holding. Now, what we're finding out is many landlords may be withholding security deposit amounts for things that they shouldn't be. The law says landlords can withhold for abuse and neglect or damage to the premises or unpaid bills like unpaid rent, unpaid utility payments, things of that nature. Where the dispute comes in, Cheryl, is to some people, to some landlords and tenants, what is considered wear and tear versus what is considered abuse and neglect. A tenant may consider a spot on the carpet as wear and tear. However, a landlord may consider that as abuse or neglect. And many times we need to point the consumer to small claims court because that's where that type of issue has to be decided. We can't sit in judgment of what's wear and tear versus what's abuse and neglect. And another issue that ties directly with that, Cheryl, is the 21-day disclosure. Within 21 days of your last day of tenancy, the day you hand the keys over, when as a tenant you no longer have possession of the property, within 21 days that landlord's got to give to you an accounting of what they'll be withholding from the security deposit. And it's got to be in writing and it's got to be delivered to you in 21 days. Some landlords don't do that, so we run into problems with that. That's quite a big topic. Landlord entry isn't so bad anymore. The law says in the state of Wisconsin, for a landlord to enter a property, there's got to be a couple different conditions present. An emergency against the life or safety or health of the structure, you know, smelling smoke, water's running, leaking on the floor, something like that, an emergency situation. Or if you agree with the tenant, you can go in really at any notice as long as you have the tenant's permission. Without the tenant's permission or without their okay, a landlord can give notice for 12 hours in the future of entry. For example, if it's 6 a.m., I could say, you know, Cheryl, I'm going to enter your apartment at 6 p.m. And the tenant really has nothing to say about it. They've given the appropriate notice. And if there's going to be an entry like that, it's got to be at reasonable times unless it's agreed to. The landlord's got to knock and announce their presence. The whole idea is to preserve some of the sanctity that that the tenant enjoys in that rental unit, but also give the landlord some kind of entry point to inspect, to repair, or to deal with an emergency situation.
Sure. There's a couple places, Ed, in Wisconsin where it's actually 24 hours rather than 12. At least it used to be. I thought it was the city of Madison and I believe Fitchburg. Do you know if those are still 24-hour notice communities?
Well, that's a tough question because in the Northeast region, from Green Bay, our regional office, we handle everything up from Crandon, up in that neighborhood.
And those are out of your areas?
All the way down, towards Sheboygan. Now, those areas would be handled by the Madison regional office. Those folks would be the experts about the individual community standards.
Okay.
I can say that Madison is a world unto itself.
In a lot of ways.
Some
right?
people have described it that way, but undoubtedly every community, they are going to have their own standards, whether it's building codes or perhaps landlord entry. But what that tells the consumer is make sure that you don't rely on one law. Get involved with the laws that are involved with your community and make sure you know what covers you.
Sure. One thing that I hear all the time, because I'm a landlord and I stay on top of these things, as you can probably imagine, from folks like you and so forth. But one thing I hear from tenants all the time is complaints about past landlords. And one of the biggest things has to do with, as you said, security deposits. And you know what it is? In a lot of cases, it's what they perceive as illegal withholdings. But a lot of it has to do with carpet cleaning. And the laws changed, I believe in 1999. January 1st of 99, I think, is when this law went into effect. And correct me if I'm wrong, but unless it is specified on a separate form called non-disclosure...
Non-standard rental.
Yeah, there we go. Non-standard rental provisions. I'm getting all my terminologies mixed up here. Non-standard rental provisions, unless it's specified there that you're going to withhold for cleaning carpets, you cannot withhold for cleaning carpets just because they've moved out, unless they've really severely damaged them or messed them up in some way, correct?
Yeah. You're right on there, Cheryl. It's something that we've looked at and we've studied at our department. Some landlords may consider carpet cleaning as routine maintenance, routine cleaning. And if you're withholding for routine cleaning, that is in direct conflict with the fact that you can only withhold for damage, abuse, or neglect. So if you do have that in a non-standard and it's agreed to, that's certainly not a problem, but you can't automatically, for every tenant, regardless of if they've cleaned the carpets or regardless of the condition, clean the carpets and then charge it against their security deposit. That needs to be something in the non-standard. And we see quite a bit of that. We're really working on educating a lot of landlords, a lot of property management companies, that's how we view the law now. So, you may want to remove that from your leases. Yeah,
you wouldn't believe the number of leases that tenants have actually shown me, where these people just write in on a blank line on the lease, a fee for carpeting. Some even say you must get your carpet cleaned by XYZ company. And it's unbelievable what you see out there.
Many times, and that's the case where the tenant, Cheryl, sometimes is at a disadvantage because if they're renting, perhaps they're new to the rental market, they're young people, perhaps they've they moved out of their house and they're looking for something they don't have to take care of as much. This law is really meant to put them on even ground with the landlord. Mm-hmm. And part of that is to keep the landlord from taking advantage of the tenant, but also to keep the tenant from taking advantage of the landlord.
Sure.
And many people think that, well, if it's in the lease, it must be okay. Look, the lease is pre-printed form that they downloaded from the internet or something they picked up at an office supply store. I hope landlords don't rely on that because the laws for landlord-tenant residential rental practices, they're varied, they're very specific. And if you're running a business as a landlord, and I've had the argument that, well, no, I just rent a house out, you're a business and you're subject to those laws, you need to really go see a lawyer as a landlord to make sure your forms are in order. Because sometimes if you make a mistake like that and you're not compliant, whether it be by purposeful ignorance or just by mistake, not being educated, unfortunately, landlords have been, there have been some legal proceedings against landlords for that, and that's meant to really preserve the rights of the consumer, because if you're going to them to rent, you're going to a landlord to rent, they kind of have the upper hand. You have no place to live, they have a place to live, and if you want it, you sign this.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, I think that landlords should be real careful. And, you know, I'm not saying overlook every little thing, but I think they really should be careful about what they're deducting from deposits, because, you know, consumers, the tenants, are much more savvy these days. Maybe not as much as they still could or should be, but they're much more savvy than they used to be. And the thing is, if they pursue you in court, they can, doesn't mean that they will, but they can get, what is it, double?
Double damages,
Double
plus
damages.
attorney's fees, plus reasonable court costs.
Yeah.
And also keep in mind that for many of our codes that we're speaking about today, we're discussing, that is called the consumer remedy, and that applies to a lot of our ag, trade, and consumer protection codes, whether it be landlord-tenant, motor vehicle repair, home improvement practices, and especially landlord-tenant. The judge has the ability to award double damages.
Yeah.
And usually it ends up in court, Cheryl, where, again, the landlord says, I feel this is abuse or neglect, I'm withholding. And the tenant's going to say that's normal wear and tear. And a wise soul in a long black robe has to decide based on the facts of the case, and they'll make the determination, and they'll make the judgment as to who's right and make the award.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, $75, for example, for a carpet cleaning, you know, times 2, that's $150. You got filing fees, which have jumped up tremendously.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you've got an attorney involved, I mean, you could be looking at several $100s before this is all over. And is it really worth it? You know? Just put it on a stupid form by itself, you know?
And all of that could be avoided by compliance to the law. That's
Yeah.
why we make such a big deal about educating the consumers and educating the landlords or any business owner. We let them know, look at the trouble this can cause you, not just legally, financially. Look at all the problems that can happen. It's easy to comply. It's very easy to comply. We'll send you a copy of the law, in fact, and you can get them online at our website.
Yeah.
It's not worth
it's
it.
very, I mean, some of it is a little difficult to read through because it's legalese, you know, but you guys have always been very helpful. I mean, you cannot give legal advice, of course, but you've been very helpful with, you know, pointing people in the right direction, doing shows like this, trying to educate folks, and you know, it comes down to education and being aware of what the deal is.
That's where we start. You know, when we look at our model for our department, what we do, it's, you know, we educate, you know, we mediate, we protect, and we enforce. And keep in mind, there's a continuum there. It starts off with education. You know, most businesses want to comply with the law, whether it's a tax law, environmental law, criminal law, or landlord-tenant law, or motor vehicle law. Yeah. If we educate them, we're more likely to see them wanting to comply. We show them how easy it is. Yeah. You know, get a lawyer, do what you need to do, you're running a business. We'll mediate complaints and try to get the parties together, and sometimes that doesn't work, and sometimes the things are going on that are pretty serious or repeated. Perhaps we need to enforce, and that's how we protect the consumers in the state of Wisconsin.
Right. And there's also an organization out there for landlords who may be watching. It's called the Wisconsin Way, and they put together a very nice, it's a very thick booklet, but it spells out the laws really in layman's terms, and it's been a godsend for me.
It's got the legalese, how it's written in the code, but it also has, I call it English, because that's a lot easier to read, and it answers some questions that, you know, a regular tenant or landlord who's, you know, maybe not managing 300 properties, maybe has a duplex or two, that can boil the law down and really say, this is what this means, this is how you should comply. Yep. A very well written book, and if you look around, you can probably even find a PDF of it on our website.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Yeah, so there's a little less expense there for the landlord.
Okay, all right, good. Home improvement. You know, let's talk about that for a little bit, Ed, because you know it's summertime right now. This is when people, you know, have the itch to make home improvements. Of course, this is also the time of year when, you know, we tend to have storms that can damage roofs, blow out windows, you know, what have you, or worse if we've got a high, strong wind or a tornado or something. But, you know, there's always going to be those who prey on people in situations like that. They come in from out of state, but what are some basic home improvement laws that consumers should be aware of, whether they're just fixing something up for the sake of improving their home or because they've had some damage and need to get it fixed?
Well, the laws that are regarding home improvement, usually there are the bigger damage cases. When we talk about home improvement laws, there's a whole set of laws in this code that really regulates how anyone does a home improvement. Now, when I say anyone, I just don't mean someone who is a registered carpenter or someone who has a name on the side of their truck. If you perform a home improvement for anything of value, you're considered a business and considered a home improvement contractor. So, unfortunately, if you're going to put in your buddy's window for $20, by statute, technically that makes you a home improvement contractor. So, I believe me, we get that kind of reaction a lot.
What if they just take you to lunch?
Now we're splitting hairs. Some of the more important issues we deal with in home improvement protects the consumer from the actions of the contractor. For example, the law states that if you're paying any money, one dime, one nickel, $100, whatever, before the entire job is done and completed and finite, there's got to be a written contract. A lot of contractors will try to do something on a handshake still. It's a good area. Sometimes you can trust people. However, having that written contract is so important. It spells out everything. There's 10 or 15 different things by our law that need to be in that contract, starting and ending dates. How are you going to know if it's ever going to be completed if there's no ending date?
Right.
The total price. You don't want to handshake on $1,000 and when it's done, well, it cost me a little bit more to get materials. It's going to be $5,000. Okay, have that number there. Make sure it's signed by both parties. Make sure that when you do sign the home improvement contract, that you understand that there are certain things that the contractor is going to be allowed to do and certain things he's not allowed to do. One thing that he's mandated to do is, and it's technical, but it's real important, something called lien waivers. Now, for people maybe that don't know, lien waivers are papers that waive the lien, which is the holdover that a supplier would have over your house. It proves the contractor paid their bills. You pay the contractor $1,000 for wood for an addition, and they deliver the wood and they begin the work. You get a lien notice in the mail from the supplier saying, the contractor never paid us for the wood, so guess who he's got to pay? Well, you have a lien on your property because that landlord took your money and used it elsewhere. That lien waiver ensures you, as the consumer, assures you that your contractor paid the bills and no one else can come after you. You need to be informed that you're entitled to lien waivers, and every time you pay your contractor, that contractor is mandated to give you a lien waiver for everything your money paid for.
And that applies, Ed, whether you're having windows put in, siding put on, no matter what, you should be getting a lien waiver because they're obviously getting their supplies from someplace.
That's correct, and your money is going to them, and why are you paying them the money? You're paying them your money for their labor, their supplies, and their subcontractors. How do you know the money's going to where it should go? Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't get there, well, again, you as the homeowner are on the hook. And let's say the job is only half done and the contractor just stops working. Well, not only have you paid your contractor once, you may have to pay someone to finish the job or correct the job, plus have to pay all those liens, or you may never be able to refinance or sell your house. So in one home improvement, if it goes real bad, you could end up paying 3 times for the same work.
At what process in the repair should someone get a lien waiver? Obviously you can't get it at the beginning because they haven't bought the supplies yet. Should you be getting it? Well, and even halfway through. When they buy the supplies, chances are they're paying their bills on like a net 10 or a net 15 basis, sometimes even net 30. So by the time they get the supplies, they probably haven't paid that bill yet for your stuff. So should they ask for it at the end?
Well, the law says that you need to receive those lien waivers, again, the proportionate lien waivers for the payments that you've paid sometime before the last payment is made.
To the contractor.
Exactly.
Okay.
The law is, I wouldn't say it's ambiguous, it's kind of open-ended. It gives the contractor a little bit of space to be able to to pay some things off with your funds and give you the appropriate lien waiver to prove to you that the bills are paid.
Okay.
Many situations, folks never get lien waivers, even though they repeatedly request them, and they're assured, oh, I'll get you a lien waiver, I'll get you a lien waiver, and it never happens. Consumers have to know that sometimes their only defense against a lien being filed in their house is their assurance that the bills are paid via the lien waiver. So that's what you need to go on. You need to make sure your contractor's paying the bills.
Yeah, I guess I've been very lucky because lien waivers, I don't think I've ever asked for one. It's not like I do a lot of repairs, but I mean I've had windows put in, I've had siding put on, soffit and fascia and that kind of thing, and I've never asked for a lien waiver. Shame on me. I mean, I should know better doing shows like this, but I just never thought about it.
Well, people overlook it, Cheryl, because again they're going to trust their contractor because again they're providing a valuable service, and maybe they have glowing recommendations. It's a technicality of the law that some contractors don't really pay attention to until something happens and you really understand how important the lien waiver is at that time.
Yeah.
Consumers are entitled to them and they should be asking for them, really at all stages of the construction, because you need to be assured. And I've met some great home improvement contractors that are really very good people. Unfortunately, for one reason or another, the money didn't get to their suppliers. It happens a lot in this economy, Cheryl.
Sure.
With home sales and repairs and people spending less money in general.
Yeah.
Contractors, they'll take a down payment and maybe use it for something else that they shouldn't be, and hoping another down payment will cover supplies. The shell game.
Yeah.
And sometimes it all collapses, and you have people that have a $50,000 lien on their home, and the construction isn't even finished.
If a supplier, Ed, is going to exercise or act on a mechanic's lien against someone, at what point would you know it? I mean, would you know it like within 3 to 6 months after the work is done? Could you find out about it, a couple years after the fact, or is that? I suppose it depends on the situation.
Well,
huh?
now you and I spoke about how some contractors pay on terms, with their suppliers. Well, at some point the supplier is perhaps not going to get their money for that material.
Right.
Well, what they're going to do is, of course, they're going to bother the contractor first and say, contractor, you need to pay us.
Yeah.
And sometimes the contractor won't or can't. So what the supplier will do is they'll send you as the homeowner, because they know where your property is, they know what project it is, something called a notice of intent to file lien.
Okay.
That's kind of the written warning that says, homeowner, your contractor didn't pay us, so we're coming after you unless we get paid. Now, any consumer that gets that should be very concerned and make sure they contact their contractor immediately and I don't know, perhaps call Consumer Protection for some advice. That's your first warning that the contractor's not paying his bills. Now, if the terms of that notice of intent to file lien, I believe it's 60 or 90 days, still not paid, what they're going to do is they're going to go to court and they're going to sue you for the value of the supplies in your home. And again, that can be accounted as a judgment against you that you've got to pay off before you do anything with your home. It's an encumbrance.
Yeah.
I've known homeowners, Cheryl, that have had 5, 10, 6, 7 liens totaling $75,000. Because where'd the money go? Maybe it went to other projects, maybe it went to personal medical expenses. Either way, it doesn't matter. The money didn't go to where it was intended, where it was supposed to go. And that, unfortunately, is a crime. And in some cases, that could be a Class G or a Class H felony that could land someone in prison for perhaps 3 years, 6 months.
Wow. Anything else with home improvement that we need to cover?
Get everything in writing, do your research, call Consumer Protection to see how many complaints we have, look at the Better Business Bureau website, and comparison shop. Get at least 4 estimates. The more money you spend, take more time.
Okay, good. I want to get to some of these other things here, and we're down to about 14 minutes. So ID theft and phishing scams, tell us how we can protect ourselves against these things.
Anything that raises a red flag or is suspicious, don't trust it. Whether it's used to be in mail, now it's emails, fake websites saying, this is Bank of America, we have a problem with your account.
That's a big one, isn't it?
Just click this link right here.
Bank of America. I have gotten probably in the last 2 weeks or so, I bet you have gotten 6 phishing scams from these people, and they're very clever, you know. And I keep turning every one of them over to Bank of America, and one of these sergeants on our police force also put this out on in their newsletter and on our website and so forth with Bank of America. They're very clever. They use the Bank of America logo. They structure it exactly the way a Bank of America email would look, but you know, there's little things in there like the email address that they want you to go to.
It's slightly different if you look in your browser bar.
Yeah.
I mean, and they purposely do that.
Yeah.
They want you to trust them. And sometimes, you know, if your bank is emailing you, well, there's a problem with my account. Oh my gosh, I'm going to find out what the deal is. I'm going to trust you. They never need any information because they already know you. They have your money. They have your accounts. What we always recommend is, if ever in doubt, and you should doubt everything, okay, go to your yellow pages, go to your statement, find your credit card bill, and call them at that known number and let them know what's going on. I will guarantee you 99 times out of 100 that they're going to say, your bank's going to say, yes, that is fraudulent, it's a scam, it's a phish. They're going to have you click on a link, they're going to have you enter an account number, or perhaps through that website they could download a Trojan horse or some kind of spyware, and perhaps a keylogger to get all your information out of your PC. Yeah. So generally banks aren't going to email you or call you, ask for information, because they already have it.
Right.
So avoid it, call them yourself. Don't give anyone anything that comes to you. You go to them first.
Well, and in the case of Bank of America, because I do have an account with them, you know, they just said forward that email to us.
What they do is they have their own IT team and investigators that, you know, like any other investigators, are going to do their best to try and find where these scammers are. Unfortunately, the ID theft phishers, the Nigerian scammers, unfortunately, they pull their scam acts from over the borders of the United States. And that makes prosecution and finding them an extreme challenge, Many of the no-call cases where we can't identify the calls that are phishing for your information, most of those are overseas too, and it's tough. It's incredibly tough.
Well, and some of these banks are sending out, and credit cards are sending out these emails to people who don't even have accounts with them. You know, but you know, you sit there and you see this, and it looks kind of official, and you think, well, geez, you know, did my credit card company maybe be taken over by another bank or something? You know, you never know. And I think the natural inclination for a lot of folks is to just click on it, and that could be their biggest mistake right there.
Well, we trust financial institutions, and something the internet and internet commerce has really taught us, in the whole World Wide Web, we've kind of, the honeymoon period is over. Now we found out the nefarious, the dark side of it, all the crime and all the problems that you can commit just by a mouse click, just by a few keystrokes. It's great for communication, but the scammers know that too. Yeah. And they know human nature, and they know that we're likely to trust technology. We're not saying don't trust technology, Cheryl, but you need to be very careful and verify and really question everything. Make sure that you're comfortable with it first.
Vigilance, you know, that's the key. Scams, we've talked kind of about this, but you know, with the Nigerian things and so forth, but there's some other scams out there. eBay and Craigslist, I think, are two of the more recent ones that we've been hearing about.
Right.
What happens there?
Well, you'll put an ad on Craigslist or eBay to, you know, sell something, you know, maybe rent out your apartment or something, because it's a marketplace. Someone will get a hold of you, and whether it's in this country or they're moving from another country, they're across the United States, they want to take you up on your offer. They want to buy what you're selling, whether it's a rental or property. You know what? They're going to take care of it. They're going to send you some money to show they're honest. Well, they're going to send you a check, but it's going to be for too much. You know, and they're going to ask you to, you know, cash that via Western Union, or cash it and send, you know, just the difference back to me via Western Union. You keep some cash yourself. It was my mistake. My secretary overwrote the check. And what happens there, it's all an advance fee scam. They expect you to cash a bad check. And it's going to take a while for the check to bounce, because they're sophisticated and they know how to do it. When it bounces, it'll bounce to the moon. But in the meantime, you've deposited that account into an account because you've had to cash it. You've withdrawn it. You've Western Union off to who knows where, and it can be picked up in any Western Union office by anyone, okay, as long as you have the secret word. And once that check bounces, guess who's on the hook? And guess who has the cash?
Yeah.
And guess who's laughing? Anytime someone overpays for something or gives you some kind of an out-of-state check, you need to really check it out. Be suspicious. Anytime someone gives you a deal that's too good to be true, trying to help you out, you really need to look at it with a very, very critical eye.
Okay. Work at home schemes. You know, so many people are finding themselves out of work these days. They're trying to become entrepreneurial in nature, and there's I mean, let's face it, telecommuting is a big thing now, and there's a lot of legitimate telecommuting out there, but there are some work-at-home opportunities. I use little air quotes for that because they're really not opportunities.
Well,
they're opportunities for someone else, but not for the person who's making the application.
And that you have that exactly right. It's an opportunity for you to lose your money. The old it comes down to the old-fashioned envelope stuffing. You know, you send away for materials or instructions, and they pretty much send you directions on how to pull the scam onto the next bunch of pigeons. Okay. Anytime someone is willing to offer you CEO income from home, millions of dollars a year, make $1,000 a day just at home. I know it's hard to suspend, you know, to suspend everything else, but really think logically at it. If those opportunities were really out there, they were real, they probably wouldn't be telling you about them. You know, it's an opportunity for them to steal your ID, perhaps, make a quick buck for, you know, for really getting nothing of value, to take your money, to take your ID. And unfortunately, people are falling for it because they need money, Cheryl.
Yeah.
It's sad. The economy really drives a lot of these scams. And if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And that's what we say about work-at-home schemes. There's no free lunch.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some legitimate opportunities, but you really, like you said, you really have to investigate things. You know, the other thing is infomercials. You see these infomercials all the time, especially late at night. You know, real estate type things, internet type businesses and so forth, and you know, we've all seen them. We've all seen what these are, and of course they make it look very attractive, and they make it appealing. It's attractive from a luxury standpoint, but they also make it attractive because it may only be like $39.95 or whatever.
Only.
Yeah, only. But wait, there's more. You know,
I'm not done.
They throw in more, and you know, and so it's very easy, I think, for people, especially in this economy, to bite at something like that.
We've had a lot of complaints coming in exactly like that.
Well, and you know, I think a good rule of thumb, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is, you know, do a Google search of this particular, you know, if they give their name or what the name of the product is or whatever, Google search it, and you wouldn't believe, well, you would, but folks out there in TV land wouldn't necessarily believe some of the scams that you come up with.
There's something that I hear on an almost daily basis, Cheryl, and that is, if I had only checked it out. I hear that really on a daily basis. We do the same kind of checks that any consumer would. We just go a little further for the consumer.
Sure.
And we, within 15 or 20 seconds, we'll be able to kind of tell if an opportunity is an all-out scam, if it's maybe just a very slick marketing tool, or whether it's just a business that is just not really good at customer service.
Mm-hmm.
We can kind of look at that. But if consumers were just to check, especially if they're spending money, even if $2 sounds reasonable, that's the hook. They have you. They can pull you in and get you to spend more. Well, in order to really get the full program to make all these millions, you've got to have the $5,000 plan.
Yeah.
You know, but think of the money you're going to make.
Yep.
What's $5,000 versus $2 million? It's only going to take you 2 hours a day. You know, you could do it in your pajamas at home. Think of buying a luxury car and a yacht,
Yeah.
paying off your bills. It does sound pretty good, doesn't it?
Well, it does. You know, better yet, you could work from your yacht. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely.
In your pajamas. Or
Don't
your
suspend
swimsuit.
your disbelief. If it sounds like it smells a little bit bad, it's going to smell a little bit bad. Call us. We'll help you out with that.
Well, and the thing is, yeah, they do a bait and switch on you, but then they keep, from what I've read with a lot of these complaints that I've found online, they keep billing your credit card.
That's the hook.
Yeah, and even if you tell them stop, you know, they won't stop. They just keep on.
Yeah.
And, you know, that can run you into so much debt very quickly.
Well, if you don't give your credit card numbers out, your debit card numbers out, and you don't pay attention to the, to all the hype, that you can certainly avoid that. You can certainly avoid that. It all comes down to keeping your private information private, only giving it to those that you are comfortable with, that you're not being sold, you want to go buy. Just don't fall for anything that's quick, that's rich. Unfortunately, it's about hard work and patience and perseverance. That's just a simple truth of life, unfortunately. I would hope that people are going to look at that and don't think there's a magic cure for the economy that we have right now.
Sure. Well, contests are another one. And I know we're running out of time here, but can you address contest entries for us a little bit? Are there, there are some legitimate ones out there, are there not?
Sure. Well, have you ever been to a trade show, Cheryl?
Sure.
Where you have the little box and you sign up to win a car or a yacht or something? Well, keep in mind that if they have your name, address, and phone number and your preferences, maybe your email address, they're going to be hounding you to buy something. They want the information. It's really tough to determine what's a legitimate contest versus what's a tough one. If you see a box and you read the disclosures and you kind of understand what it's about, it's a local business, it's being sponsored locally, you know what? If you're entering it on your own, no problem. But if someone's coming to you, getting you to enter something, you don't know if there's something attached to it. You don't know if there's going to be a cost involved, or you're going to be opening up the door to someone knocking on your door to sell you something. And keep in mind, if you fill out an entry card, you may be waiving your right under the do not call list. Because if you check a box or you didn't read the fine print, it may say in there, I give this company permission to telemarket me, or permission perhaps to sell my information to someone who maybe won't pay any attention to the telemarketers or to the no-call list, or may just be someone that wants to scam you. Mailing lists are freely bought and sold without regard to the background of the company or the intent of the caller. So your information's out there, and unfortunately it's for sale.
Unbelievable. I just want to touch on this real quickly. Number 10 on your top 10 consumer complaints is travel and tourism.
Yeah.
What's the deal there? What's that all about?
A lot of people book trips further in advance before we had these economic times. Now people are finding perhaps they can't cancel, or they cancel and there's a severe penalty. Okay. Well, a lot of the complaints are coming from situations like that. And it's really no one's fault, but I can understand how they would complain. The other half of those, the other part of that, is these travel clubs that, you get a postcard. Come on in for a free dinner. We'll tell you all about our travel club. You get there, you eat. It's a hard sell, Cheryl. They don't want to let you leave. They give you the greatest deals, and, well, we'll cut it down a little bit. They check your credit. Well, they'll get anything they can from you. And then you come to find out the travel opportunities, whether it's a club, a timeshare, really isn't worth the paper that it's printed on, and the company goes bust, and you've paid $4,000 or $5,000 for a membership that is essentially worthless.
I'm glad you mentioned timeshares, because I was going to ask you about that.
Oh,
so
boy.
Anyway, well, wow, this hour has flown by, and we could talk for another hour or two, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So we're going to have you back again.
Thank you.
And give our best to Bob as well.
Certainly will. I certainly will.
Real quickly, the phone numbers again for the do not call is 1-866-9-NO-CALL, and Ed's website, not his direct website, but for the Consumer Protection Office, is datcp.state.wi.us, and I think we've probably been putting that up throughout the show. So thanks much for being here.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure, Cheryl.
It was a pleasure, and I look forward to having you back.
We'll do it again.
That's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Take care, and keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.